tossing in my...
In this series, I'm going to be talking about primarily muskrat trapping. And to begin with, I want to show off the equipment that you pretty much have to have in order to work in or around them. I'm going to start from the ground up, no pun intended. Number one thing is a good set of waders, unless you're trapping through the ice. I use hip waders. These are lacrosse trapline waders. You need a good quality boot. If not, you'll have holes in them and you'll be leaking. I've had to cross a river when it was below 30 degrees out with a leak in my boot because some ice cut a hole in it. I could barely feel my feet by the time I got back to the car. Something else, if you can, always carry a set of tire patches or wader patches with you so that you can repair them on the line, or at least some duct tape. It's not funny walking when you can't feel your feet. I don't like chest waders. If it's deep enough I need chest waders, I bring in my canoe and work out of that. It's a lot safer and it's a lot easier. I can also carry my gear in the thing and carry a couple 100 pounds of gear instead of 5 or 15 pounds in my pockets. Also in the clothing, I like to carry, this is an old army surplus. I can carry a lot of stuff in these pockets. It's warm. I don't care if I beat it up a little bit. And I do prefer to wear a darker color because I don't like being seen by people, trapeze in particular, or antis. You can lose a lot of money and a lot of gear that way. This is a tool you cannot be a trapper if you don't have. It's a trapper's trowel. You notice it's a longer handle. It's built heavier than a garden trowel. I tried using garden trowel when I first got into trapping. I folded it in half on the first day. They don't work. It's like something for whacking a rat on the head if you need to. Digging back your cubbies, digging a dirt hole for coyotes. Excellent all-around tool, very handy. I do not like the narrow 2-inch fox trapper's trowel. If I need to dig that narrow of a dirt hole, I can use a trap stake. I want to be able to dig a hole back, I can put some raccoon bait in, whatnot, or dig a trap bed out and not have to work for 2 hours to dig one little hole. Second tool that you pretty much have to have is a hatchet. It needs to be sharp, but don't carry a good quality hatchet. It will get rusted, it will get beaten around. I've lost one on the trap line so far. I still don't know how I lost it, but I did. Pretty much have to have this for driving nails, chopping a steak, hammering the steak in. Okay. A good light. You do get caught out after dark, or sometimes you have to start before daylight. Sometimes you just need to look up in a dark hole. These things are indispensable. I definitely prefer a headlamp over a flashlight so I can keep my hands free. Good knife, I prefer a fillet knife for skinning rats. It's quick, easy, bends around bones. It's cheap. I'm a very cheap person. Also something to sharpen the cheap knife with. Okay, I know a lot of people think they're tough because they can work in cold water barehanded. If I do that, I'll be bleeding within the hour. You're going to end up with arthritis. It's really not good. I use a cheap pair of military surplus decon gloves that I got off of eBay. I think I paid $2 a pair for them. They're a very tough, heavy-duty rubber, easily patched with a tire patch. Inside them, I use a simple wool liner gloves. These are a lot cheaper than the fancy ones they sell in the trapping catalogs, and they work just fine. Okay. Also, a pair of fencing pliers. Use them for pulling nails, cutting wire, hammering nails. I've used these many, many times. Something I don't see a lot of people mentioning bringing on the trap line is some flagging tape. You have to be very careful, but it is very easy to lose these traps, especially in cattails or a beaver swamp. You need to mark them. You have to be careful because you can lose traps to thieves this way. I usually mark a little ways off so I know I've got a trap in the vicinity but not pointing directly to it. Also useful if you get lost, which I never do. Wire for tying your traps in if for some reason you can't do it any other way. Hanging a bait, use it to improvise a gambrel if you catch something that you need to skin out on the spot. It's not fun carrying a 30-pound raccoon out up a steep hill or out a couple miles. That was Mason's wire, pretty cheap, $5 a roll. I'm experimenting with some lighter stainless steel wire right now. I've been happy with it, but I do have to twisted. Something else, there's a good bottle of nails. I carry both the straight nails. I can use them to build a platform if I need to. Put 3 of them into a log to clamp with 110 or a conibear onto. Nail a bait to a tree for a mink or raccoon. And something I've almost never seen another trapper using, other aside from the one I learned from, is an 1.5 or 2 inch fence staple. If I can, I will nail this to a log or to a tree every chance I get, particularly if I have a chance of catching a raccoon or a bigger animal. A lot of thieves have been foiled by these things because they don't have the equipment to hold them out. It's not that hard to unwrap a wire that a lot of people use or pull a stake. These things are hard to get out if you don't bring the right tools. Not foolproof, but it works. Next is a good lure. This is actually just toothpaste and apple in a shampoo bottle. Caught a lot of rats on it. Works very well. It's easy to use. I split the cap, pour a little bit on the rock or whatever next to my bait or my trap. Let it go. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the meat of the issue, the traps. Okay. A lot of people tell you use a number 1 on rats. They work all right on a float or inside of a hut or hole. Beyond that, they have absolutely no place on the rat line. You will have twist outs, ring outs is another name for them, where the rat fights so hard he will wring his leg off. The rat will survive, but you've now got an educated, or as educated as you can get a rat, swimming loose with 3 legs. They're not good, they cost you money, they're too light. They don't drown properly or sufficiently. If you're going to use a long spring, which I do prefer a long spring over a coil spring. Coil springs tend to have too much steel moving upwards and they will throw water animals out. I don't know why it is, but it happens. These are the first traps I used, a 1.5 long spring. They're heavy enough to drown and they grab higher up on the shoulder of the rat to help prevent ring outs. A lot of times you'll get both front paws. They're very handy traps. They'll also hold a raccoon a lot better than a number 1 will. Raccoons and mink are something you will have to contend with on a rat line sooner or later. Always make sure you anchor for them. But sooner or later, you will have one. Now, not to go back on what I just said about the number 1s, this is number 1 stop loss. If it's stop loss, it will work fine. The spring adds enough weight to help drown them. And to explain what a stop loss trap is, they are designed specifically for muskrat. They have this extra hoop that flips up when you catch the rat. Rat gets caught, starts fighting it. The guard fires, you can see it. Basically straight arms them so they cannot fight or twist. This is my personal favorite rat trap. It's an old Blake and Lamb, number 1 stop loss. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best trap ever made, ever will be made. Okay, next I'm going to get into coil springs. The coil spring you see is a lot more nowadays than you do the old long springs. As I've said, I don't really care for them on the rat line. This one here, it's a number 1 Northwoods. See the short chain? I use it for pine marten. It's just fine on dry land. I don't care for them much in the water. Number 1 won't hold a raccoon very well. If you can get a hold of something, he'll pull out every time. If you are expecting a raccoon on the line, or if you want to catch him, I quite often intentionally set for a rat, mink or raccoon, whichever comes first. Go to a bigger 1.5 coil, something like that can hold a raccoon. A decent number 2 long spring works good. I've caught a lot of raccoons actually in the number 1 stop losses, especially the older Blakes that were built to take a heavier animal. I even know of a guy that caught a coyote in one by accident once. The trap you won't see very often anymore, although they're still effective, is a jump trap. This is a number 1, same as the other 2. It is way too light. You can find a 1.5 or number 2. They're still good. A little bit trickier to set, but they fit into some cubbies really well, work well in huts. Different floats they work well on. This is number 11, basically 2-sided. Number 1, these things are very good for raccoon, mink, muskrat. They drown quick. They got some good weight to them. They're a very stout trap. Okay, from there I'm going to move into the conifers. For mink, muskrat, 110 is definitely the all-around best trap. A lot of people like their 120s. They say it kills the mink better. In my experience, the only thing a 120 is more expensive than a 110. Very simple trap, very effective. Squeeze the spring, set the dog. I'll have to do a video at some point on how to set these. Very good trap all around. I've caught a lot of marten in these, mink, muskrat. You find a den entrance, just plug it up, and you will catch a rat. If there's a chance of catching a beaver in there, or if it's a little bit too wide, you can go up to a 220. A 160 works as well. Check your laws. These are not legal in all states, especially in dry land. It's illegal in Montana to set this on dry land, only in the water. I have caught good-sized beaver in these though, and they hold, but they're small enough to catch a rat or a mink also. From there, I do want to move on to anchoring. This is Montana. It is the Rocky Mountains. It's pretty rare that I can actually drive a stake into the ground. A lot of times I have to resort using a bag full of rocks. These work really well on raccoon. They drown rats, beaver, no problem. I usually have 10 to 15 pounds of rocks. If I'm expecting a raccoon or possibility of accidentally catching a beaver, I'll go up to 30 pounds. I just tie my trap to one end of it, throw it out in deep water, and I'm set to go. Or if you're reasonably certain you're only going to catch a rat or a mink, wood sticks work just fine. Get out in deep water, use your hatchet, pound it in. Work quite well. You do want to get at least a foot down into some good solid ground, because I have accidentally caught and held raccoon this way. If you have the soil for it and you're expecting a raccoon, don't hesitate to use a steel stake or a disposable earth anchor. They all work. Just be prepared for what you might catch. Make sure you can hold it. You might be targeting a raccoon, or actually a muskrat, and catch a raccoon. I've done it. Caught a 30-pound raccoon and a #1 last year that I had set for muskrat in an area I've never seen a raccoon track in. I was not expecting it. As I mentioned before, I know of a guy that actually caught a coyote in a mink set in a #1 stop loss. First aid kit, very handy to have around. Make sure you have enough clothing. I always have stuff with me to start a fire. Cell phone's not a bad idea. Carry all the fun stuff in. This is fiber tough packed basket. Good all around tool, easy to throw a rat back or a beaver back into. Be aware though, if you bend over, you're gonna get racked in the back of the head by whatever equipment you got in here. Also, they put the drain hole on the wrong end of it. I plug mine with duct tape. If not, you're gonna get a wet beak. One major drawback to using these is if somebody sees you with it, they know what you're doing, and you will end up missing equipment. I normally only use it when I'm on private property. An alternative that I really like is a military surplus Alice pack. It's got a lot of pockets I can store stuff in. Big enough pocket I can carry a beaver or raccoon out in. And a good comfortable pack frame. Not to mention they're cheap and pretty decent quality.